My name is Dianne Vale, 28 years old. It started on a Sunday afternoon that felt too perfect to be real, the kind of afternoon that makes you uneasy if you're paying attention. The air smelled faintly of grilled meat, sunshine bouncing off wine glasses set carefully on the patio table, kids running barefoot across trimmed grass, while someone's Bluetooth speaker played something upbeat but forgettable. My father had scrubbed his backyard until it gleamed. New cushions on every chair, a cooler overflowing with name-brand sodas and imported beer, even hired staff manning the grill. He called it a family celebration, though I couldn't think of a single thing we were celebrating. That should have been my first warning. Mark, my boyfriend of over a year, stood beside me, his arm brushing mine in quiet reassurance. He caught the tension in my jaw, though I hadn't said a word yet. The announcement came in my father's voice, too casual to be casual. We're all heading out next month. 7 days. Alaskan cruise. Already booked. My stomach dipped. All? He avoided my eyes, turning instead to flip a steak with unnecessary precision. Yes, everyone. Harper and Cody. Their families. Your mother and me. Mark leaned forward, confusion sharpening his voice. And Dianne? Dad finally looked up, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The same smile he wore when he wanted to soften bad news. She understands. Always has. Besides, her job is demanding. We figured she wouldn't want to come. The words hit like stones thrown lightly, but landing heavy. I stayed quiet, because what I wanted to say would have cracked open the party like a dropped plate. Instead, I walked into the house, up the short hallway, and placed the cruise documents I had discovered in the entryway, printed itineraries with every name listed but mine. I didn't slam them down. I didn't raise my voice. I just set them there, beside the fruit bowl, polished to a shine. The silence that followed felt like confession. My mother stepped forward, hands outstretched. Honey, you're overreacting. Let's just sit down. No. My voice came out softer than I expected, but steady. I'm finally noticing. Mark and I walked out together, the weight of dozens of staring eyes behind us. Back at my apartment, the air felt too still, like a stage after the curtain drops. I dropped my overnight bag on the couch, sank cross-legged onto the carpet, and began pulling out boxes I hadn't touched in years. Old photo albums, shoe boxes crammed with report cards, participation ribbons, brittle birthday cards. I spread them in a semicircle around me, like I was conducting an autopsy of my own life. The first album cracked open to Christmas 2018. Harper, my older sister, unwrapping a MacBook. Cody, my younger brother, grinning behind the wheel of his first car, used, but still worth thousands. Then me, holding up a scarf from Target, the $19.99 price tag still dangling like a cruel joke. My smile looked genuine in the photo. I remembered believing it was all they could afford. Page after page told a story I'd refused to read. Family trips without me, Yellowstone, Disney World, Napa Valley. Always an excuse. Someone had to water the plants. My internship conflicted. I wouldn't enjoy wine country anyway. Always a reason I was left behind. Reasons that sounded almost logical until strung together. My laptop sat open nearby. I pulled up the spreadsheet titled Monthly Budget, scrolling back through years of entries. The numbers stared back like witnesses. April, $350. Dad's insulin costs. June, $1,400. Hospital copay for his diabetes. August, $800. Mom's car needed transmission work. Last month, $2,800. Family emergency fund. That last one clenched my stomach. It was my Lake Tahoe money. Money I'd saved dollar by dollar from weekend freelance projects, skipped lunches, late nights hunched over design drafts. Money I'd poured into their emergencies while they planned vacations with everyone but me. As I highlighted each transfer, a detail snagged my attention. Several withdrawals bore memos I never used. Abbreviations in block capitals, EDU a lot, G trust. My notations were tidy lowercase. These were not mine. A flicker of unease ran through me. I set the spreadsheet aside and reached for another album. A brittle envelope slipped out, yellowed at the edges. Inside, folded carefully, was a notarized document I didn't recognize. My name, my signature, or something that looked close, next to a line that read, Limited Authorization. Dated when I was 19. My chest tightened. I didn't remember signing it. Memories rushed in. Age 7, watching Harper practice piano scales with a hired coach while I sat at the kitchen table. "Can I take lessons too?" I'd asked. Mom's answer had been soft, almost apologetic. "We can't afford 2 kids in music lessons. Maybe next year." Next year never came, but 6 months later, Cody got guitar lessons. Age 13, sobbing at the kitchen table because I couldn't go on the 8th grade science trip. $400 is too much right now, Dad said, patting my shoulder. 3 weeks later, he took Cody on a father-son camping trip that cost double. College years, 3 jobs while Harper and Cody got rent money and car insurance covered. "You're so independent, Dianne," Mom would say, smiling. "We know you can handle it." The lies sat heavy, stretching back further than I'd let myself see. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "We need to talk about this misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. As if deliberate exclusion could be misread, I silenced the phone. It buzzed again, this time Harper. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Dianne, this is ridiculous. You're making Mom cry." Her voice was sharp, rehearsed. "We meant to invite you, but Mom said you'd understand. You always do." The last 3 words hung like a verdict. You always do. Not anymore. I ended the call. Mark came by later, bringing takeout. I tried to explain, but the words tangled. "It's not just the cruise, it's everything. Years of being the afterthought." He squeezed my hand. "Then maybe it's time to stop playing their role for them." That night, unable to sleep, I went back to the notarized slip. The signature bothered me. It was mine, but not. A loop too round, an R too sharp. I pulled up old job applications from that year, comparing signatures. They didn't match. My chest tightened with a strange mix of dread and clarity. The pattern wasn't just favoritism, it was something deeper, written in bank codes and forged signatures. I placed the slip back in the envelope, tucked it under the sealed jewelry kit on my shelf, and sat in the dark, listening to my own breathing. For the first time in 28 years, I wondered if my family's betrayals weren't only emotional, but financial. The next morning, my phone erupted in a storm of buzzing notifications. First, a string of texts from Cody. "This is BS, Dianne. We've always included you. You're being dramatic." Then, a final one that made my throat burn. "Fine. How much do you want to let this go?" I placed the phone face down on the counter, heart thudding. How much? As if betrayal had a price tag. By mid-afternoon, my voicemail filled with voices I barely heard anymore. Aunt Patricia's sing-song reassurance. "Families fight, sweetheart. Forgive and forget." Uncle Jerry, his tone rehearsed. "Rainy girl, your mother is worried sick. Call her back." Even cousin Megan, who hadn't texted me in years, sent a message with the same exact phrasing. It was like they were all reading from a shared script. When Mark stopped by that evening, I was sitting cross-legged on the floor again, scrolling through my phone with mounting nausea. He dropped a paper bag of Thai takeout on the table and crouched beside me. "You look like someone trapped in a beehive," he said. "Because I am. Every relative I've ever had suddenly cares about me, all in the same words. Mom's recruited the cavalry." He tilted his head. "Classic guilt campaign. You going to cave?" "No," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "Not this time." Still, I couldn't stop shaking. An hour later, Melissa showed up without warning, arms full of wine and takeout containers. My best friend since college, she didn't bother knocking, just let herself in and surveyed the chaos. "You look like hell," she said bluntly. "Thanks. What happened?" I tried for casual, but my voice cracked. "Found out my family has been deliberately excluding me from things for basically my whole life. Nothing major." "Not major?" She set the food down with a loud clatter and stared at me until my eyes blurred. Then she pulled me into a hug so fierce it almost broke me. "About damn time you noticed." I pulled back, stunned. "What?" "I've watched you drop everything for them for years. Babysitting at the last second, wiring money, spending Christmas bonus checks on gifts, and getting socks in return. And when was the last time they showed up for you?" The question hung heavy. I had no answer. The next day, I sat in Dr. Eleanor Warren's office, my therapist for 6 months, trying to make sense of the documents, the cruise, the pattern that stretched like a crack through my whole life. She listened carefully, pen still in her lap. "What I hear is that you've uncovered a pattern that has always been there. This isn't normal family behavior, Dianne. It's systemic exclusion." My throat tightened. "I always thought I was overreacting." "You weren't," she said gently. Now you have choices about how to respond. That night, I opened my banking app again. My pulse thudded as I scrolled through the withdrawals. I couldn't stop staring at those cryptic memos. EDU Allot. G Trust. Who labeled them? They weren't my words. The next morning, I walked into my local branch. The teller, a young man with sandy hair, asked how he could help. My voice came out sharper than intended. I want to know who has access to my accounts. He clicked through his screen, brows furrowing. You've had a joint account since college, yes? With your parents listed as co-holders. I knew that, I said. What else? He hesitated, lowering his voice. There's also an old limited power of attorney on file, authorizing your father to manage sub-accounts under your profile. My breath caught. Since when? Looks like signed when you were 19. The notarized slip, my chest squeezed. The teller leaned closer, lowering his voice further. If you don't remember signing it, you might want to review it with a legal advisor. Just saying. I left the bank with my hands trembling. That night, I sat with Melissa on the couch. She popped open the bottle of red wine she'd brought. So, what did the bank say? I told her, showed her the slip. Her eyes widened. That signature doesn't look like yours. I know. So what's your move? I swallowed. First step, cut the cord. No more access. The following morning, I closed the joint account, transferring the balance into my personal checking. 17 withdrawals in the past year alone, none made by me. My throat ached with every pen stroke as I signed the closure paperwork. The bank manager, an older woman with steady eyes, slid me a new card. Effective immediately. Only you have access. Walking out, I felt 10 pounds lighter. But the family storm didn't stop. If anything, it intensified. Harper called, voice thick with irritation. You're ruining everything, Dianne. Mom's not sleeping. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm not the one who planned a cruise without me, I said evenly. That's different. You thought I'd never find out. That I'd keep funding your vacations and emergencies while you left me behind. Silence crackled. Then Harper's voice dropped into that familiar pleading register. Please, just come over and talk. Don't blow up the family over this. I ended the call without responding. That afternoon, Melissa found me at my desk at work, staring at the unopened jewelry kit on my shelf. Still sealed? She asked. Still sealed, I said softly. Feels like if I open it, I'm admitting I'll never get what I wanted from them. She touched my shoulder. Or you're claiming what they never gave you. That's power too. I stared at the turquoise beads inside the packaging, wondering which was true. That night, Mark came over, setting his keys quietly on the counter. Your mom called me, he said. My heart lurched. She what? She asked me to convince you to calm down and come to dinner. Said you'd listen to me. I laughed bitterly. Of course she did, always triangulating. If she can't control me directly, she'll recruit someone else. Mark's eyes softened. I told her no, that I'm with you, whatever you need. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and unexpected. I whispered, thank you. Still, in the quiet of my apartment later, unease coiled in my gut, because beneath the guilt trips and gaslighting, there was something else. That notarized slip, those odd memos, the way Dad's smile lingered when he thought he'd gotten away with something. This wasn't only emotional manipulation, it was financial, maybe even legal. And deep down, I suspected the cruise was just the beginning. The following week, I tried to live as though nothing had happened. I buried myself in deadlines, meetings, and the comfort of checklists, but silence didn't last. On Thursday, a text from reception at my office lit up my phone. Heads up, Cody's here. Says he's waiting for you in the lobby. My pulse spiked. I grabbed my bag and slipped out the back exit, but when I reached the parking lot, he was already there, leaning against my car, arms crossed, looking like the younger brother who used to bait me into fights he never admitted to starting. You can't avoid me forever, he said, straightening. I'm not avoiding you, I replied, keys tight between my fingers. I'm refusing to see you. There's a difference. His eyes narrowed. You're tearing this family apart. Mom barely sleeps. Dad keeps checking his phone every 5 minutes. The kids keep asking where Aunt Dianne is. A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Sharp. Bitter. I'm tearing the family apart? I didn't plan a cruise without one of us. That was you. All of you. He winced, but pushed forward. That was different. We thought... You thought what? That I wouldn't find out? That I'd keep handing over money while you drank champagne on deck chairs? Something flickered across his face. Guilt, quickly swallowed by defensiveness. It wasn't like that. We've been planning this cruise for 8 months. Mom thought... 8 months? The words punched through me. My chest tightened, vision narrowing. Say that again. 8 months, he repeated, softer now. I swallowed hard. 8 months ago, I'd canceled my Lake Tahoe trip. The same week Mom had called, voice trembling about Dad's medical bills, asking if I could transfer the savings I'd been guarding so carefully. She'd promised it was just until things stabilized. 8 months. You planned this cruise while telling me to cancel my vacation because the family needed my savings. My voice shook, but I didn't. You knew. You all knew. Cody shifted uncomfortably, arms tightening over his chest. You always help out. It's what you do. No, I said slowly. It's what you take. The parking lot blurred, cars and people fading. For the first time in years, clarity cut through the noise. I was never the daughter, the sister, the equal. I was the safety net, the ATM, the afterthought who kept them afloat. I turned to unlock my car. We're done here. He stepped forward, but I shot him a look that froze him mid-step. Something in my face must have told him the truth. This wasn't a bluff. I drove away without looking back. That night, I booked a ticket to Barcelona. 1 round trip, departure in a month. I'd always wanted to see Gaudi's architecture, but always pushed it off. Family emergencies, drained accounts, obligations. Not anymore. My confirmation email glowed on the screen, a promise to myself. Still, the buzzing didn't stop. Aunt Deb left voicemails about me having a breakdown. Harper emailed mutual friends, painting me as unstable, refusing to see family, ignoring calls. Mom's cousins sent messages urging me to forgive. They all circled like vultures, delivering the same lines, the same script. I started drafting my own counterscript. Late nights, I scribbled on legal pads. Every transfer I'd made, every trip I'd been excluded from, every gift lopsided beyond excuse. I outlined what boundaries I'd need if reconciliation were even possible. Family therapy, financial independence, acknowledgement of how I'd been treated, and, most importantly, time. When I showed the draft to Melissa, she leaned back in her chair and whistled. That's not a boundary list, Dianne. That's a contract. Exactly. At work, my coworker James noticed my distraction. He brought me coffee and asked if I was okay. When I told him pieces of the story, he shook his head. My parents pulled something similar, he admitted quietly, claimed me as a dependent for years after I moved out, even when I was working full-time, got thousands in refunds off my name. My stomach turned. They can do that? They can try. It's fraud, but the IRS doesn't always catch it. Later, sitting alone in my apartment, I remembered the odd withdrawals labeled EDU Allot, G Trust. The notarized slip with the shaky version of my signature. James's warning echoed, fraud, dependent claims, tax transcripts. The pieces started to align in a way that chilled me. What if my family hadn't just excluded me? What if they'd been using me, legally, financially, for years? I dug through my files until I found the slip again, the loops in the letters, the jagged R. I compared it to old job applications from 19. They didn't match. Then another memory surfaced. Dad's wallet sliding open at Bellini's years ago, his hand lingering over a bank card embossed with letters that looked too familiar. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. Now, my stomach clenched. The sense of betrayal stretched deeper than favoritism. This wasn't just emotional cruelty. This was something with teeth. Still, the family narrative persisted. That Sunday, Harper called again, voice syrupy. You've always been the strong one, Dianne. Can't you just forgive? Mom's not herself without you. I almost laughed. You're right about one thing. I've always been the strong one, and I'm done being used because of it. I ended the call, then blocked her number. That night, I lit a candle on my kitchen table and spread the documents in front of me. My budget spreadsheet, the photos, the notarized slip, my half-written boundary list, my Barcelona confirmation email. It felt like the pieces of my life were finally on the same table, waiting for me to choose how to rearrange them. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for their permission. The invitation came in Mom's voice, brittle but determined. Dinner at Bellini's, the whole family. We need to clear the air. I almost said no, but part of me wanted the confrontation on neutral ground, somewhere public where they couldn't twist the story without witnesses. I told Melissa, and she insisted on coming with me. Not to fight, she said, but to make sure you don't stand alone. Bellini's was dimly lit, stained glass windows scattering jewel tones across the booths. The smell of garlic butter and warm bread filled the air. I hadn't been here since my college graduation, the one celebration that was actually about me. They were already seated in the corner booth when we arrived. Mom dabbed at invisible tears with a napkin. Dad sat stiff, posture formal, like a man meeting a loan officer. Harper's smile was too wide, Cody's arms crossed defensively. "Right on time," Mom said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Melissa slid in beside me, placing a quiet hand on my elbow. Her presence steadied me. Dad cleared his throat. "We appreciate you coming, Dianne. This misunderstanding has gone too far." His voice carried the polite formality he reserved for business dealings. Harper leaned forward, her tone rehearsed. "The family isn't the same without you. We just want things back to normal." "Normal?" I repeated softly. Cody jumped in, words tumbling over one another. "You've always been dramatic. We need to put this behind us. For Mom's sake, for Dad's health, for the kids." I let them talk. One by one, they made their cases, weaving guilt, obligation, and nostalgia into a net they thought would catch me. Mom recounted sacrifices. Dad mentioned braces and a used car at graduation. Harper and Cody volleyed between appeals to loyalty and veiled accusations. When they finished, I placed a manila folder on the table. My fingers traced its edge. "May I speak now?" They blinked, surprised. I'd never asked for the floor before. I opened the folder and slid out the first sheet, a spreadsheet, neatly itemized. "This is every financial contribution I've made to this family over the past decade. $37,842. That includes the $2,800 I gave for Dad's medical bills the same week you booked your Alaska cruise." Mom's hand flew to her throat. "That's not—" I'm not finished. My voice didn't rise, but it filled the space between us. I laid down the second sheet, a timeline on graph paper, highlighted dates stretched back 15 years. "These are family events I wasn't invited to or told were canceled due to money problems. Yellow covers nearly half." Harper's eyes darted over the page, widening. "And this." I set down a photo, a jewelry-making kit I'd bought myself last year for $35. The same one I'd begged for on my 9th birthday, the one Mom had deemed too expensive before buying Harper her third American Girl doll. I keep it sealed as a reminder. The booth grew quiet. Nearby diners had gone still, forks hovering. Even the waiter hesitated before approaching with water, then retreated when he saw the tension. Dad shifted, tugging at his collar. "We've always done everything for you. You've never appreciated it." "Then it should be easy," I said softly. "Name 3 things you did for me that you didn't also do for Harper or Cody. Just 3. The silence stretched. Mom opened her mouth, closed it. Dad's face reddened. Harper studied her hands. Only Cody met my eyes, his expression hardening. Melissa sat rigid beside me, her jaw tight. Finally, Dad slammed his palm on the table, making the silverware jump. "We've sacrificed plenty." His outburst drew stares from nearby tables. I didn't flinch. "Then why can't you name 3? The weight of silence pressed down again, heavier this time. Mom's mascara smudged as a genuine tear slid free, something I'd never seen. Harper's gaze darted between them, as though seeing the cracks for the first time. Cody slumped back, the fight draining from him. I slid another paper across the table. "These are my terms. 6 sessions of family therapy before I'll consider attending gatherings. Complete financial independence. No more loans, no more contributions either way. Public acknowledgement of how I've been treated. And time. I need space to heal." Dad scoffed. "You can't dictate terms to your family." "I'm not dictating," I said, standing slowly. "I'm protecting myself." As I gathered the papers back into the folder, Melissa caught my eye and nodded. We slid out of the booth together. But as I turned, the waiter returned with the check. He set it down between us. Dad reached automatically for his wallet, pulling out a black bank card. My breath caught. The embossed initials weren't his, they were mine. I froze, watching as he tucked it back quickly, fumbling for another. He didn't notice that I noticed, but I memorized the last 4 digits. Melissa leaned close as we walked out. "Same bank logo I saw in his folio earlier. Same branch as yours." The evening air felt sharp as glass. I breathed deep, steadier than I'd expected. Behind us, I heard Mom's muffled sobs, Dad's awkward murmur of comfort, Harper calling my name once but not following. Melissa squeezed my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded. For the first time in a long time, yes, but something's not adding up. I thought of the bank slip, the odd withdrawals, the card with my initials. The betrayal wasn't just exclusion. It was theft, hidden in plain sight. And if I was right, Bellini's was only the opening act. In the weeks after Bellini's, the silence from my family was louder than any shouting match. No calls, no texts, no guilt-laden voicemails. For the first time in years, my phone stayed quiet and I could breathe. Work flourished. I landed a promotion I'd been chasing for 3 years, my evenings finally free of constant emergency phone calls. I moved into a new apartment with high ceilings, sun-warmed walls painted coral, the color I'd always loved but never chosen when I lived under their shadow. When Thanksgiving approached, I hosted my first dinner on my own terms. Melissa arrived with a casserole, her husband Tom carrying wine. James from work came with his partner Daniel. My neighbor Mrs. Winters, who had lost her husband that spring, brought apple pie. Even Dr. Warren, Eleanor, outside her office, joined us, carrying cranberry sauce she swore was her specialty. My dining table brimmed with people who chose to be there. Conversation flowed, laughter rose and fell, and for once, no one interrupted or dismissed anyone's story. Before we ate, I lifted my glass. I want to thank you all for showing me what family can be. My eyes drifted to the sealed jewelry kit on the shelf. Once it had been a reminder of everything I never received. Now it was something else, proof that I could choose differently. But peace is never permanent. A week later, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Mom stood in the hallway, eyes rimmed red, her umbrella dripping rainwater on the mat. "Dianne," she whispered, voice breaking. "Thank God. We're going to lose the house, the second mortgage, your father's medical bills. Please, help us one last time." Her hand reached for mine, familiar and expectant. I stayed still. If it were me, jobless, broke, desperate, would you take me in? Would you cover my bills? Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came. Her silence answered more honestly than words ever could. I nodded once, then gently closed the door. 2 days later, Melissa and I walked into a restaurant downtown. My heart thudded when I spotted them. Mom, Dad, Harper, and Cody, seated together beneath a stained glass window. It was an ambush. Melissa squeezed my hand. "You don't have to." "I know." But I sat down anyway. The manila folder I carried felt heavier than it should. Dad cleared his throat, voice clipped. "We can't keep going like this. The family needs to mend." Mom dabbed her eyes. "We made mistakes, but we love you. You've always been our strong one." Harper leaned in. "The kids miss you." Cody's glare was harder. "This has gone far enough." I listened without interrupting. When their voices fell silent, I placed a cream-colored envelope on the table. It had arrived at my apartment the night before, slipped under my door by someone who hadn't stayed to be seen. Inside was a photocopy of a will addendum, notarized years ago. It referenced an education trust set aside for the youngest child's development. My name, no accounting attached. Just a post-it note stuck to the edge in Aunt Catherine's handwriting. "I told your mother not to hide this." I watched their faces as they read. Harper's lips parted, confusion spreading. Cody's jaw tightened. Dad's nostrils flared, but his eyes flickered with something else. Fear. Mom's hand trembled as she pushed the paper back toward me. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said quietly. "There was money meant for me, education, independence, a future, and somehow it vanished." Dad's voice sharpened. "It wasn't like that. We borrowed. We intended to repay when the house appreciated, when the kids were older, when it was convenient." My words sliced through his excuses. 8 months ago, you asked me to cancel my vacation and hand over my savings, while you sat on a trust fund that had my name on it. Melissa's hand tightened on mine under the table. Mom's eyes filled. "We only ever wanted what was best." "Best for who?" My voice didn't rise, but the tremor of restraint was there. "For Harper, with her MacBook? For Cody, with his car? For every family trip I was told we couldn't afford?" The restaurant air grew heavy. Diners shifted, trying not to stare, but listening anyway. Dad leaned forward, voice dropping into a growl. "You don't know everything." "Then tell me." But he didn't. He sat back, jaw clenched, silence damning him more than words. When I stood, sliding the envelope back into my folder, my chair scraped against the tile. This isn't over, not by a long shot. Outside, the night air felt colder than it should have. Melissa exhaled beside me. "That envelope changes everything." I nodded. My mind replayed the sight of Dad's bank card at Bellini's, the odd withdrawals labeled EDU Allot, G Trust, the notarized slip with a forged version of my signature. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore, it had teeth. and I was ready to bite back. I couldn't sleep after the dinner with the envelope. The photocopy of Grandma's will addendum burned in my mind. A trust fund meant for me, the youngest child's development, siphoned away until nothing remained but excuses. The next morning, I called in a favor from James. His partner Daniel worked as a CPA, sharp-eyed and meticulous. When I showed him the paperwork and the strange bank memos, EDU Allot, G Trust, his brow furrowed. "This isn't household budgeting," Daniel said, tracing a finger over the highlighted entries. "This looks like trust distributions, but they're coded as if they came out of your account." "Could my parents move funds like that without me knowing?" I asked. He hesitated. "Not legally, unless they had power of attorney." I pulled the notarized slip from my folder, the one with the shaky version of my signature. Daniel studied it, then glanced at me. "Do you remember signing this?" "No." His lips pressed into a thin line. "Then someone forged it, which means they had authority to create subaccounts, withdraw funds, maybe even open credit lines. You should pull your IRS transcripts. If they claimed you as a dependent after you were earning, that's fraud." The word made my stomach clench. Fraud. Not favoritism, not emotional neglect, a crime. That evening, I sat at my laptop navigating the IRS portal with shaking hands. When the transcript loaded, my breath stopped. For 2 years after college, I'd been claimed as a dependent. I'd been living on my own, juggling 3 jobs, paying my own rent, and they'd still listed me as if I were their child at home. Thousands in refunds they'd pocketed on my back. Melissa's voice, low and sharp, cut through my haze. "Dianne, this isn't just family drama anymore. This is theft. They used you." I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. 2 days later, the bank confirmed my worst suspicion. There was a sub-account attached to my customer profile, opened the same year as the forged slip, tied directly to the card Dad had tried to use at Bellini's. The manager spoke carefully, her eyes sympathetic. "With that document on file, we had no reason to question his authority. I'm sorry." Sorry didn't cover it. I walked out into the cold air, fury coursing through me. All those nights I skipped dinners to freelance. All those family emergencies I'd covered while they dipped into money that was mine by right. When I confronted Mom, she crumbled fast. Tears streaked her cheeks, her hands twisting the hem of her sweater. "We never meant to hurt you. We thought it was temporary, just until things stabilized." "Things have been stabilizing for nearly a decade," I said. Her voice broke. "The medical bills were real. The mortgage was crushing us, and Harper needed tuition help. Cody needed braces. Your father said we'd pay it back once the house appreciated." Dad didn't crumble. He bristled. "We did what we had to. You'll thank us one day when you realize families survive by sharing resources." "Sharing?" My laugh was hollow. "You shared my resources, without asking, without even admitting it. That wasn't survival. That was theft dressed up as sacrifice." For the first time, Harper looked unsettled. "Wait, that money was Diane's?" Her voice cracked, her gaze swinging between them. Cody shook his head. "No, they wouldn't." "They did," I cut in, placing the documents on the table between us. "Here's the proof. Forged authorization, trust withdrawals, dependent claims. Do you still think I'm being dramatic?" The room thickened with silence. Finally, Harper whispered, "I thought we were all struggling equally. I didn't know." But Cody's jaw tightened. "You're twisting this. Mom and Dad were just trying to keep everyone afloat. Don't act like you were the only one who sacrificed." The words sliced, but I didn't let them stick. That night, Melissa and I sat at my kitchen table, papers spread between us. She tapped the will addendum with one finger. "You could press charges. Forgery, tax fraud, misappropriation of trust funds. They'd have no defense." I stared at the documents, my chest heavy. "And put my parents in prison?" "Dianne," she said softly, "they already put themselves there. You just have to decide whether you're going to be their jailer or their mirror." I closed my eyes. Images flooded in. Mom humming while making dinner. Dad teaching me to ride a bike, badly but proudly. Harper braiding my hair when we were little. Cody chasing me through sprinklers in the summer. The good memories. The pieces of them that weren't monstrous. Just flawed, selfish, desperate. But then the other images pushed back. The cruise documents. The scarf with the price tag. The sealed jewelry kit. The forged slip. The scales tipped and tipped again. By midnight, I had a decision. I wasn't going to press charges yet, but I wasn't going to let them wriggle out either. If there was going to be any chance of rebuilding, it would be on my terms. Real restitution, public acknowledgement, therapy, and oversight, so they could never hide behind forged papers again. I drafted a framework. The sub-account closed immediately. Restitution of diverted funds through a restricted trust, overseen by a neutral fiduciary, Aunt Catherine, if she agreed. 6 sessions of family therapy before I'd consider attending gatherings. Public acknowledgement, not just whispered apologies. I emailed it to them before dawn, attaching the proof. These are my terms, I wrote. Without them, the next step is legal. When Dad called that afternoon, his voice shook with barely contained rage. You're blackmailing your own parents. No, I said evenly. I'm giving you a choice. The line went quiet. I hung up, my chest pounding, but lighter somehow. For the first time, I wasn't begging to be included. I was setting the rules. Yet deep down, I knew the hardest part wasn't getting them to agree. It was holding the line when they tried to bend it. And they would. I knew my family too well to believe otherwise. The silence after I sent my email lasted 3 days. 3 days of checking my inbox with a stomach knotted tight. 3 days of wondering if Dad would show up at my door pounding, if Mom would collapse into dramatic sobs outside my building, if Harper or Cody would flood my phone with furious calls. On the 4th day, a reply came. Not from Dad, from Mom. We will agree to your terms. Please let us meet with Aunt Catherine present. I'm sorry for what we did. We just didn't know how to stop. I read it 3 times, my throat tight. There was no excuse, but there was something I hadn't expected, an admission. The following week, we gathered in Aunt Catherine's sunlit dining room. She sat at the head of the table, reading glasses perched low on her nose, the photocopy of the will addendum beside her. I warned you, she said to Mom and Dad, her voice low but sharp. This money was not yours to touch. Dad shifted, defensive even now. We thought we'd repay it. You didn't, Catherine snapped, and you knew it. The terms were reviewed line by line. The sub-account closed. A restitution plan drafted, payments made not directly to me, but into a restricted trust under Catherine's oversight. Therapy sessions scheduled with a counselor none of us had ties to. When Dad signed the papers, his hand trembled. For a man who prided himself on strength, the crack was visible. Mom tried to reach for my hand across the table, but I pulled mine back into my lap. Not yet. That evening, Melissa opened a bottle of champagne in my apartment. So, do you feel vindicated? I stared at the signed documents spread across my coffee table. Not vindicated, just free. But freedom is fragile. 2 weeks later, I received an invitation to my parents' 40th anniversary celebration. A cream envelope, Mom's handwriting on the front. Inside, a note. We would love to have you join us, but we understand if you prefer not to. Please let us know what works for you. We miss you. No guilt, no demands. Progress, maybe. I sat with it for days before deciding. On the night of the party, I walked into the banquet hall with Melissa at my side. Conversations dipped when people saw me. My cousins whispered. My uncles stiffened. For years, they'd been told I was difficult, dramatic, unstable. Tonight, they'd see something else. When dessert plates were cleared, Mom stood, glass in hand. Her voice trembled, but she didn't falter. I need to say something, she began, scanning the room. Over the years, our family made choices that excluded Dianne. We took from her when we should have supported her. We hid truths that belonged to her, and we caused harm that no apology can erase. A hush fell. Dad cleared his throat. His voice lacked its usual bravado. We failed her. I failed her. I can't undo it, but I can admit it, and I can try to do better. My chest ached. For so long, I'd begged for recognition. Now, under the glow of chandeliers and the gaze of extended family, it was finally spoken. Afterward, Harper approached me near the buffet. Her voice was quiet. I didn't know about the trust. I should have asked more questions. I studied her face, the guilt etched there. Knowing and not knowing isn't the same as standing up, but if you want to try, then try. Cody didn't come near me. He lingered at the edge of the room, arms crossed, expression sour. Some patterns die slower than others. When Melissa and I left, the night air was cool against my skin. For once, I didn't feel like I was fleeing. Back home, I placed the jewelry kit on the table. My fingers hesitated on the seal. For years, it had been a symbol of deprivation, of what I never got. Now it could be something else. I tore it open. The turquoise beads spilled into my palm, catching the light. Not perfect, not polished, but mine. I threaded them slowly into a necklace, hands steady, breath calm. When I clasped it around my neck, Its weight was gentle but undeniable, a reclamation I could feel against my skin. Weeks later, at a Tuesday night volunteer session at the youth center, a quiet 19-year-old named Ashley showed me a doll she'd bought herself. "My parents promised me this when I was little. They never came through," she said. I smiled. "Then you bought it for yourself. That matters more than you know." As she walked away, I touched the necklace at my throat. Some wounds never vanish, but they stop bleeding when you choose yourself. Later that night, as I stood at my apartment window, watching the city lights shimmer, my phone buzzed. A bank alert. Auto pay attempt declined. Link to inactive account. One last remnant of the web they'd built, now cut clean. I silenced the notification and set the phone aside. Outside, the city stretched endless, alive. For the first time in 28 years, I wasn't weighed down by obligations I never chose. I was free to choose myself. And I did.